Good morning, everyone, and happy Saturday. How's everybody doing this morning?
Hey,
Ooh,
good
great. How are
morning.
you? Woohoo!
All right. Well, we are clocking in here around mid-August somewhere is what I have, and getting going on our Saturday morning walk and talk. Always fun. On the docket today, we've got, as promised, last week I teased out that after boring everyone to tears with macroeconomics and microeconomics and yen carry trades and how that plays into HealthPointe coaching, I teased out that I may continue that boredom streak and get into more geeky stuff. And this week, I'm going to deliver on that with a segment on genetic SNPs, and specifically the 5 genetic SNPs that people can be tested for to see if they have these SNPs and how that can affect metabolism and weight loss. And then we've got Carol that is going to be doing a segment on vitamin D and mitochondria. And then we might have some travelers, if they are able to chime in today, that are traveling the Poconos with grandkids and may chime in on the fun and continued success that they have in their weight loss journey and healthy lifestyle, even while traveling and seeing the Poconos with their grandkids. So with that, we'll get going around the horn. It's all very shoot from the hip here during this hour segment, and we'll go straight to Carol. Good morning, Carol.
Well, good morning, everybody, and great to be with you. We have a beautiful, absolutely perfect blue sky. There's not a cloud in the sky. The humidity is not 1,000% like normal. And so I'm going to move away from these doggies. And I am out power walking. For those of you that are new, I think if you're going to get me up at 8 o'clock in the morning and be talking to people, I'm going to make multitasking of it, and I'm going to get my 10,000 steps in before breakfast. So that's what I'm doing. But I just wanted to touch on two things real quickly. One, very quickly, because we will be talking more about it. But if you were on our HealthPointe program on Tuesday night, we introduced a new product, Excess in Ignite. I had to think for a minute. Excess Ignite. And it's a mono orange, which is a blood orange from South Sicily, I believe. And it's a great new product. And what I've chosen to do, and of course that's optional with your coach, is to add it to our recommended HealthPointe program, because one of the key things in the mono orange is documented studies. And I am sending him over to Eric. For some reason, I tried to put him on HealthPointe and couldn't get him in there. But documented studies on its ability to reduce visceral or belly fat. And that is one of the most dangerous fats, and one that most people fight, or many people fight. And so we'll have more information on this. And I will send out this HealthPointe audio, and you can send it out to your guests that are on today, so they can hear more about it. The other thing I wanted to touch on today was vitamin D3 with K2, which is our vitamin D product. And my husband and I have long been proponents of vitamin D. And for those of you that are new, our vitamin D comes from a mushroom that's grown on our certified organic or NutriCert farms. And so we have complete control over it, and it's certified organic. And in addition to the D3, has been added K2. And the two of them work synergistically together to break the D3 and get the calcium that is in those products and get them into your bones. And so this is important, because if you're just taking calcium by itself, or you're ingesting calcium and you don't have that D3 with K2, it sometimes will harbor around the heart arteries. And we certainly don't want that, because that's what causes hardening of the arteries. And so what the K2 does, and probably many products out in the marketplace do not have K2 in them, and they're D2, not D3, and there's a huge difference in the quality. But what the K2 does is it acts like little truckers on your arteries, and it gets that calcium, which you don't want deposited there, and it moves it into your joints and your bones, which is where you do want it so that it can do the necessary work. But I got an article that I thought was interesting, and I'll read little portions of it so I don't get too wordy here. But it says vitamin D offers many well-documented benefits, including your immune system, your mood, and your bones. We've always known about the immune system. The mood and the bones, I don't remember it being, this directly referred to, but it says new research has revealed yet another reason why this vitamin is essential for your well-being. And it talks about documented studies on vitamin D and how they relate to muscle mitochondria. And your mitochondria are your little energy engines that make everything work. And so it says this study compared the effects of diets with and without vitamin D on laboratory mice. For 3 months, one group of mice received adequate levels of dietary vitamin D, while the other received none. And then it went on to say, and again, this is a whole article, but I'm just pinpointing 3 months of diet-induced vitamin D deficiency reduced skeletal muscle mitochondrial respiration in mice. And what that means is that it reduced its ability to help the mitochondria work and activate like it's supposed to. It says researchers observed the impact of vitamin D deficiency on the mitochondria respiration of skeletal muscle in mice. They found that a lack of dietary vitamin D reduced mitochondrial respiration, which may help account for muscle fatigue and other effects of vitamin D deficiency. So it says mitochondria are the powerhouse of the cell because they produce the energy that your cells need to perform their functions. So if the mitochondria in muscle cells are unable to provide energy, the cells cannot function properly. And that's what we want. We want every cell in our body to be functioning at optimal. It says this explains why the vitamin D deficient group experienced significant muscle impairment. Vitamin D deficiency is a widespread health problem. As many as 40% of adults in the United States don't get enough vitamin D. And that may help to explain why so many people experience a loss of physical ability and muscle mass, especially as they get older. But we're even finding this in younger people and in athletes. However, this new finding often also offers hope. If vitamin D deficiency is a driving force behind the loss of muscle and physical function, then vitamin D is an untapped solution. Improved vitamin D levels can help maintain muscle performance and prevent age-related muscle loss and weakness. And when you have age-related or any related muscle loss, that is, to me, spells out instability. And what is the number one thing that older people have challenges with, and many times what ultimately takes them to their death? They have muscle weakness, therefore they fall, they lose their balance, they fall, they break a bone because their muscles aren't real good because their vitamin D is not sufficient. They end up in the hospital, and many, many times, you've heard this over and over, they end up with pneumonia that ultimately takes them. So this is a real preventative for all ages, but in particular, I think people that are elderly really need to address this. So in closing, it says muscle function is directly linked to bone strength because the pressure that our muscles exert on our bones stimulate bone growth. And that's what we want. We want that healthy reformulation of bone. And we need to have the vitamin D to do that. Weight-bearing exercise, which is what we're doing right now, power walking in our HealthPointe program, exerts positive pressure on our bones, and our body responds by strengthening them. So if you got strong bones, you've got good muscle, then you have much, much less chance of falling and breaking a bone. But it says the loss of muscle mass and function can interrupt this productive cycle, preventing the maintenance of strong bone. And then in closing, it says the bone building benefits of vitamin D don't stop there. Here's some other ways that vitamin can help support and protect your bones. Vitamin D helps protect against falls and fracture by reducing chronic pain and muscle weakness. Sometimes people fall because they're in pain, and so this will help prevent that. Vitamin D has mood boosting abilities, which can help reduce stress. And stress, we know, cortisol wants to hold on to fat and prevents us from losing weight effectively. So if you can keep your stress level down, that will really help in your HealthPointe program. It helps you stay optimistic in your pursuit of all health, but this says bone health. Vitamin D reduces blood sugar levels. And of course, there's Eric's topic, and it's been linked to bone damage. Vitamin D helps to protect and improve your vision, which reduces falls. And last but not least, vitamin D regulates your body's ability to absorb calcium and mineralize the collagen matrix that makes up your bones. So it's so wonderful because everything seems to work together. But if you're not working with a good bone structure, ultimately you're going to run into some serious problems. And so I did want to highlight that. We have an excellent vitamin D. And if you're new here, seek out the person that put you on the HealthPointe program, and they can send you a share on our vitamin D with K2. And that will give you a lot of real in-depth, wonderful, simple information for you. And so, Eric, there's the vitamin D. There's also CalMag D and bone health. Those are the three really, really good products in our line that can help you in this area. But if you simply move to vitamin D that we talked about today, you've made a major, major step in creating great bone health and all the other wonderful effects that vitamin D has. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to you, Eric.
Wow. Amazing. If we call Kathy the step queen, I think we call Carol the bone health queen, because Carol, you've done a number of segments on bones that just absolutely blow my mind with new understandings and stuff. So one of the things I've heard you say before, and sometimes it just takes multiple listens, multiple exposures before it kind of clicks in. I've heard you say before why the K2 is important with the vitamin D, and specifically vitamin D3, but why the K2? And this is kind of the first time, for whatever reason, it kind of clicked with me, and I'm hearing what you're saying. So I think I am. So what we're saying is that if somebody's taking a vitamin D product and it doesn't have the K2, then that may be something where the calcium kind of settles in more in their arteries, perhaps around their heart arteries, versus shuttling. The K2 shuttles that calcium to your bones and muscles, which is what, when people are taking a vitamin D, they often are thinking in that framework is, hey, this is, good for my bones and so forth. But if they're naively, as I joke, picking up their supplements at the gas station, they get some, vitamin D that's been cooked up in some basement in another country, doesn't have K2, that may be something that is settling in that calcium around their arteries of their heart versus getting it shuttled to their bones. Is that kind of the understanding?
Yeah, I love the little trucker thing because I'm a very visual person. If I can see a truck going through my arteries and picking off the calcium that creates hardening of arteries and transporting it over into my bones where they're screaming for it, that just makes a very, very easy visual for anybody to understand. And quite honestly, Eric, and I'm going to stop here because I get excited and then I get winded. Even when doctors, and I'm not picking off on doctors, but even if a pharmaceutical has been recommended to you, many times it's K2, or the doctor will say, oh, you can't take vitamin D because of this medication or that medication. And many times they're talking about K2. And there's a big difference between K3, I'm sorry,
D2.
D3 and D2. Yeah.
Yeah.
Many times it's a D2 vitamin D. And that is a man-made vitamin D that was formed many years ago by the pharmaceutical industry. And it is not D3. D3 is a totally different benefit. And then when you add the K2 with that, you get that heart benefit and you get the benefit of utilizing your calcium. It's just a tremendous package. Also, ours isn't a pharmaceutical. Ours is a natural from one of the richest sources, and that's a mushroom. And the mushrooms are grown on our Nutrilite farms or our NutriCert farms, which are Nutrilite regulated with the same regulations that we have on our own farms, either one of those. And that's what they use. And so there's 100% quality control on all of this. So it's just an amazing product. We started really upping our vitamin D during COVID. We quite honestly didn't prescribe to the COVID thing. We said we're going to fight it ourselves. And so we kept our immune system up very, very high through the Nutrilite supplements. And, you'll probably have to strike that one off. But I think that we did that primarily then because of the immunity. You hear zinc, you hear vitamin D, you hear vitamin C, and you hear these same things over and over again. So we really upped our vitamin D, and we've continued with it because I just think with all the stuff that's going on around us, it's just a real winner, and we believe in it. So
Right. And yeah, I know, maybe a year ago or something, this might have been a, third rail topic. I think, the science has come along, post pandemic, and it's a whole different, set of results that are out there. And I too recently heard something. It was a podcast on a totally different topic, but it happened to mention something that I kind of did a quick 10-second rewind on it, and that was the incidence or lack of hospitalizations with people that had sufficient or optimal vitamin D numbers, and COVID, related deaths, and COVID related, intubation and hospital stays and so forth like that. I think it's irrefutable at this point that vitamin D was a huge, huge factor. I mean, it's long been known that vitamin D is a big, big factor in terms of our immunity, but where was a bit of a third rail topic was, anything that was, used a term like COVID in it was a trigger, but suffice it to say that most Americans, or a lot of Americans will say, are vitamin D deficient. And secondly, that proper vitamin D can have a tremendous benefit to your immunity and, of course, also bone health. And,
this article that I just read off of, I just printed last week. So this is current information when she says 40%. This is our Dr. Goldstein, when she talks about the 40% of Americans do not get enough vitamin D. They're short in their blood work. And it was interesting as I was walking by listening to you, Eric, an elderly woman comes out. I think she's some Asian of some sort. I don't know whether she's Korean. Sweet, sweet lady. And she's got a walker. And here she is. And I don't know how old she is, but she's well up into her 80s. And she's out there walking with her walker, taking her morning walk. And I'm thinking, good grief, if she can do that using a walker, why can't all of us be out there or inside doing that? So I'm sorry. I was going to try to capture a picture of her.
No, I saw the diversion that you were having, and that's pretty cool to learn that's what the diversion was. And no, I get it. In fact, I was chatting just the other day with Emily, my wife Emily, and I'm trying to think of the relative connection, but it would be my brother-in-law's mother. Anyhow, anytime we go out to Santa Rosa, well, often when we go out to Santa Rosa, we see her, and she is this sweet thing that is just scooting along. She's just, she's just grabbing her purse, scooting along. I mean, anytime that we're out there, we're going. I mean, we're going to, this walking destination, this place that, we're always going. And she just grabs her purse and goes along. And she had a birthday the other day, and I don't recall the exact number, but let's just say it's well up there. And I was like, really, Emily? That's how old she is? And she said, yeah, she sure is. But she swims every day. Think about the things that we've covered in HealthPointe, right? In recent episodes. She journals every day. Okay. And anyhow, we could kind of go through the list of things that she does, but she's not officially a HealthPointe, poster child, but she has been practicing basically those lifestyle choices. I've been with her, I see how she eats, her dietary choices and so forth. And she's just, she's happy and vibrant and giggly. She's so cute, and she's stable. I mean, sometimes, I feel like, oh my gosh, I've got to like chase after her and make sure, everything's okay. But nope, she just kind of navigates the train, steps over this, steps down that step, gets in the van and okay, where are we going next? And I love it. And I think it's just a testament to doing the right things, making the right choices. It's very cool.
Yeah, especially because Emily, being Vietnamese, Vietnamese people are kind of fall into that being smaller in stature. And so when you are smaller in stature, now, reason I always got real heavy into maintaining bone was because I'm small in stature, I'm Caucasian, and I'm, I don't know, there was something else. Oh, I guess whatever. And it's important. It's just really, really important to create those habits. And that's what Emily's mom did. And look at Emily. I mean, you're both of you, unbelievable examples of healthy living. HealthPointe is the program. Healthy living is the result. Habits of healthy living. And we just got to kind of always go back to that.
Yes, absolutely. And Emily's not on the session today. Otherwise, in fact, she mentioned she may do a segment, so I don't want to steal her thunder, but I want to mention that being Asian, that, what are Asian, when you think of Asians and the food they eat, what food immediately comes to mind with, particularly Vietnamese, right, is rice. Okay. Yeah. So recently, we had, some time ago, I got us both a CGM, okay, continuous glucose meter. And this was, just doing some of the testing that to become more knowledgeable in HealthPointe, and people have an option of just poking their finger and doing their blood test like that, but a CGM, which you stick on the back of your arm, you can scan your app and it will show. The way I say it is instead of like a snapshot picture, it's more like a movie. It shows when you ate this, when you did this, when you woke up, when you slept. It's not reliant on these single moments in times where you're just snapping this picture. Anyhow, I got that. Unfortunately, Emily's basically broke. It didn't, we were down in the Outer Banks, so we weren't near the pharmacy, and it just stopped working. And then so she never really got to experience it. Fast forward to just the other day, a week or two ago, we have kind of this concierge doctor type of a thing. And in the visit with her, she's able to prescribe a CGM, no problem. None of this, your A1C needs to be 5,000 or something like that we've run into, where, some doctors won't prescribe a CGM. Anyhow, she's like, yeah, I can totally write you a script. So Emily buzzed down and picked that up. And oh my gosh, here's the only negative of a CGM. If you put it on the arm of somebody like my wife, who is like data driven and, you know, a bit of a geek, and I can say that being a geek myself, I can't tell you so many times in this past week, I'm like, Emily, put the CGM down. Just calm down, calm down. She like wakes up, she scans her CGM, she eats a peanut, she scans her CGM, she takes 2 steps, she scans her CGM. I'm like, take a breath, settle down, it'll all be there. But she is just loving this, geeking out. And the point being is back in 2017, prior to 2017, you know, being, you know, we'll just call it an Asian household, the rice cooker was always going. Okay. So we always had rice with this, rice with that. And, you know, we didn't know any different. And not only were we having rice, but, you know, I was eating quantities of it, right? I can remember the plates and how like 3/4 of a plate would be filled with rice. And then all the other stuff just kind of was accent around this big pile of rice and stuff. So it was not only the rice itself, because I don't want to demonize rice, but it was the quantity that I was eating and every day. So that went away effectively as we learned and moved into our HealthPointe cycles. We did 2 HealthPointe cycles. I dropped like 17, 18 pounds, and the rest is history. We really don't revisit it. However, her parents and aunts, so mom and dad and Aunt Kim, are living with us right now, and it's great and it's awesome. But mom and dad, they like to, you know, go out to eat to this particular Asian restaurant and also other events, you know, where it'll be a Vietnamese or Asian event, and they have the luncheon afterwards. And oh my gosh, you should see the spike in Emily's CGM numbers. It is, you know, we talk about the CGM and blood sugar being like, you know, we want to get it from a roller coaster into more like ripples on a pond. You know, that's kind of how I describe it. Like most Americans, they wake up, they have their sugary cereal or their bagel or their muffin and their Starbucks sugar loaded coffee, and their, you know, their blood sugar goes up. Then, you know, the insulin, you know, kicks in and tanks that blood sugar, and it goes hypoglycemic, which creates more crazy cravings. Then they arrive at work and they eat more bagels and whatever is there. And it's just a vicious cycle of dysregulated blood sugar. So we use a metaphor of a roller coaster. I've got a new metaphor now after seeing Emily's stable blood sugar. Then she hits this event with her mom and dad and has this luncheon. It is a rocket ship. That thing is like screaming to the moon with this. And here's the thing, she's like, I didn't even really eat the rice, but it wasn't the rice. It was the saucy, you know, Asian, you know, who knows what's in that sauce, right? That's why you got to be careful at restaurants and stuff, is usually a lot of sugary components and other things in there. And it absolutely, when she scanned her CGM, that thing is just like steady, steady, steady. And then it's like, bam, to the moon, this thing is going. And then, of course, and then she comes home, and what happens with her energy? Of course, what happens with everybody's experienced this, they get the food coma crash because now the blood sugar is kicking in. Now, what's been fun, just again, and I'm kind of stealing her thunder here. So, Emily, if you're listening to this later, you'll have to adapt your talk. But, you know, what do we know that we can do? You know, if you find yourself eating a little bit of food like that or whatever, you know, first of all, minimize it or avoid it first and foremost. But if you do have some, what do we know we can do? We know we can take a walk afterwards, right? We can do some physical exercise. Your muscles will, you know, act like a glucose sink and kind of, you know, absorb, you know, it kind of sucks up that glucose. So that's something that she's learned because she's being fed this data where when she sees that glucose spike like that through just some event with her parents or something, then she can, you know, hit the Peloton or go for a walk or do some strength training and stuff. And that's been really fun for her to measure as well. So anyhow, so lastly, and then I'll get into my segment. I wanted to circle back to the start of what you were talking about there, Carol, on your segment. You mentioned about the mitochondria. Again, in terms of the health of the mitochondria, I just want to emphasize again to people that your mitochondria, as Carol is saying, is like your energy engines. It's what converts, in the metabolic process, your fuel into usable energy in the form of what's called ATP, and it fuels your cells. And what's interesting is, I don't know if you guys have ever heard the term brown fat. And sometimes, like if you listen to certain doctors, notable doctors, I won't use their names because we try to avoid that, but very, very notable doctor, he talks about activating your brown fat. Okay, the things that you can do to activate your brown fat. You know what makes brown fat brown? Now, we're not talking obesity fat. We're talking healthy brown fat. You know what makes it brown? Mitochondria. That coloration of the fat being brown, what is labeled as brown fat, is mitochondria-rich fat. And so when people like this doctor are talking about, doing cold plunges and doing this and doing that to activate your brown fat, what they're doing is increasing. You want to increase the quantity and the health of your mitochondria. And so when he's talking about activating your brown fat, and if vitamin D can be a component in that, wow, anything you can do to increase the health and the quantity of your mitochondria is key. So I had made a note in your talk or your segment there, Carol, about that. So mitochondria, so important. Okay. Anybody else? Any comments? I feel like this has been the Carol and Eric show so far. Oh, hey, Erica.
Hey, how are you guys? I turned off my camera because I realized I'm still in my pajamas and my hair is all up. I was on for a second and then I was like, oh, wait a minute.
It is
Good
Saturday
morning, everybody.
That's excused.
Good morning,
No problem.
Erica.
Hey, I wasn't planning on hopping on today, but Carol, you kind of mentioned you were talking about vitamin D and doctors, writing a prescription for vitamin D. And it just reminded me of something that came up this past week with one of my rehab trainers. So she's been in the health and wellness industry for 15 years, lots of certifications, really healthy herself. And she got some blood work done and found out her iron was really, really low. And so her doctor gave her a prescription that, it's a prescription iron that she has to get from the pharmacy. And so I was just kind of curious, and I asked her, I said, what brand is it? I would just like to look it up because I feel like a supplement snob now, right? And she kind of knows what I do. And so we looked it up together in the office, and this expensive prescription iron from her doctor had so many additives in it. It had Blue Lake #4, yellow, whatever. And, I was telling her, I'm like, this really shouldn't be in your iron supplement. Like these food dyes are proven to cause like neurological issues. And she kind of made this face and was like, oh my gosh, why are all these additives and things I don't need? She's like, I don't care what color my iron tablet is. And so I sent her the link to Nutrilite and told her about, our product line. And she was just disgusted with what was in her iron tablet. And I said, yeah, you really got to pay attention. I'm like, are you taking anything else? And she goes, yeah, I take fish oil. I'm like, well, what brand do you take? And she was taking Nature's Bounty. And so we looked that up, and there's like canola oil, glycerin oil. I'm like, yeah, and you don't know how much of that is in there and how much is actually fish oil because it doesn't have to be regulated. And yeah, so she's going to be switching over to our healthier supplement line. But I just found it so interesting, and it's not like doctors mean well, but they just might not. They have so much on their plate, and they might not be looking into the specifics of what's in each supplement, or they get sales reps to come in and push certain lines. And anyways, I just found that really interesting and eye-opening, from a prescription level supplement to even Neutralite being far superior. So I just wanted to share that.
Tying in with that, Erica, was an article I saw just briefly yesterday, and it was about eye health and a couple other things, but it was for eyes. It was from an eye institute, and they were saying the power of omegas. And so I started reading, and then they were pushing a particular pharmaceutical product, and there was no mention of what type of oils were in there, and no friend of the sea certification for purity, nothing. And unfortunately, not to give doctors a bad rap, because there's many good ones, very, very good ones, but their expertise is in medicine, not in nutrition. And we have to remember that when there is something we can do nutritionally, we have to go and do our own homework, because exactly what you said, Erica, they purchase their products from a pharmaceutical rep that comes in, and in many cases, there's benefits to that rep. I'm not saying in all, I'm just saying, but they certainly are not coming off of farms. And your medical doctor really isn't, they don't even profess to be an expert in that field. They'll tell you that they don't get much study in that field. And so we just, like Hank always says, you have to be your own doctor in nutritional areas. And and there's so much available now. And of course, we got Eric that comes with all of his unbelievable information that is so beneficial. So we just have to be our own doctors in some cases.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially
And
in
thanks, Eric,
preventative.
for sharing about the brown fat and mitochondria. I had no idea, but yeah, that makes so much sense.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Wow, what a powerful story, Erica. Thanks for jumping
Eric?
on here. Yes, Hank.
Yeah, just a quickie, because vitamin D is one of my favorite topics. Okay, and I just want to add on. I think I've mentioned it a number of times. One of my favorite guys I subscribe to is Dr. Mark Mikosi, MD, PhD. Okay, and he recommends. Now listen to this, because this throws some people off. He recommends 10,000 units a day of vitamin D3 with K2. Now, when people see that, says, "Oh, wow, that's huge." You know what happened way back when? At one time, vitamin D was figured out in micrograms, okay? But people were just, I'm sorry, the pharmaceutical industry traded that to international units. And to figure out how much 1 microgram is in international units for vitamin D3, I'm looking at the sheet right now. You multiply it by 0.025. 0.025, okay? So 10,000 units that Dr. Mikosi talks about is basically 250 micrograms. It's not big. And when you look at when you go through lab tests of blood lab reports, they throw a very low number on vitamin D3 or whatever vitamin D they show, and it's so minimal, it's crazy. And we talk about 10,000 units from our vitamin D3. That's 5 of those tablets a day. 5 a day. I take 5 to 7 of those a day. Okay, we live in a sunshine state. Now, if you're up north, you don't get the sunshine. Here, you've got even more. Just understand how important vitamin D3 is with K2, and make sure you're getting enough of it. Okay? I hope that helps.
Awesome. Yes, definitely helps. And it brings to mind something I meant to mention earlier too regarding the cost. And this comes from a friend of the pod, sometimes on, but often these days very, very, very busy with some other responsibilities, and that is Marnie. And Marnie mentioned, I remember her talking about somebody that was interested in vitamin D. And they were taking vitamin D, and kind of similar to Erica, what you kind of went through the process with your coworker, that you said, well, what's the source? Anyhow, with Marnie, this person was taking vitamin D or was considering purchasing it. And so Marnie was explaining, the value of getting a plant-based vitamin D, with all the value of our brand, the mushrooms, the K2, etc. And so the lady was like, okay, that sounds good. How much? And Marnie, looked it up and told her the price. It was cheaper than this other brand. I don't know the other brand, but just know that apparently our vitamin D is, very, competitively priced. And I say that only because normally, if you got products, A versus product B, and product B is known to be in a totally different category of quality, you expect to pay more, right? You do that in vehicles. If you're going to buy a Mercedes versus a, I don't know, I won't pick on brands here. You expect, okay, I'm getting this different quality, this different pedigree, and I'm going to pay more for that. And in this case, anyhow, in Marnie's experience, that person was buying a Ford product, to continue with that analogy, and paying the same price as if she was getting a Mercedes, or was prepared to. Now she went on to order from Marnie. So just know that the pricing is, very competitive, which is cool. You get the best of both worlds. You get a very competitive price. Sometimes our prices are going to be more, and should be. There's a difference between getting something that comes from 6,000 acres of certified organic farms versus something that is cooked up in a lab somewhere. So you should be paying more. You should expect to, and you're putting it in your body after all. It should be no apologies for paying a bit of a premium for quality when it comes to the marvel that our body is. You don't fuel your vehicle with substandard fuel. You don't put sand in your gas tank, and that's a 30, 40, $60,000 vehicle. Our bodies are arguably worth billions of dollars, and we've got to fuel it properly. So competitively priced, long story short. Okay.
Hey,
Well,
Eric,
you
can I
guys,
add something else in there?
absolutely, Larry. Welcome, Larry.
Okay.
All
Hey, good
right.
morning, everybody. I was, as I was listening, I was thinking about some of the things that we've been talking about. And today, I'm actually going to my high school reunion. And so I'm going to meet with some of the folks that I went to school with many, many years ago. Funny thing is that when I go now, we all look like Santa Clauses. So, okay, we got gray beards and white hair. I don't have any hair, so it doesn't happen like that. But anyway, I'll be meeting with them. This will be our 55th high school reunion.
Wow.
Wow.
Yep.
Nice.
And so, but I have to give, I've always tried to do things to take care of my health, but most of the time I was doing things that were physical. And, you get to a point where all of a sudden your body is not responding the same way. And I found myself, putting on unwanted weight and different things. And so, I have to give a lot of credit to this HealthPointe program, to Nutrilite, all the great products in Nutrilite, and also to the artistry program as well. But it's a funny thing when I go there with them, they go, Larry, what did you do? Did you find the fountain of youth or something? They just kind of, because everybody's looking a little bit older. We're looking like grandparents, which we are. and and we have been, they've kind of included our class in with 50s and 60s group, even though we're on the tail end of it, the last year of the 60s. So anyway, it's always fun to get back with them. We have a golf outing today, and I have to give credit. I've been taking these products for years and years, and I have to, not only trying to stay active, but also the things that I have put into my body, I think has helped me to stay healthy. Right now, I'm the longest living member of my immediate family. And so, grateful for that. And I wasn't expecting, my mother died at an early age. So I really wasn't expecting to live, as long. I was a little afraid of that. But here I am and steadily moving on. So I'm excited about getting the chance to see some of my former classmates. We've lost some people along the way, but I have to give HealthPointe and Nutrilite a great amount of credit for staying as healthy as I have been. So maybe next week when I get back, I can tell you a few more stories, but so far I'm healthy and ready and raring to go. So that's just, I don't know whether that has anything to do with our segment, but
It
there's
does.
my 2 cents.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
It absolutely does have everything to do with it. And, you're a walking, talking testimony. And so and by the way, Larry, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, happy recent birthday. Is that correct?
yes,
All
just had
right.
a recent birthday. Yep.
All right.
Trying to catch up with Hank. He's got one coming too.
Right on. No, that is fantastic. And yeah, looking forward to next week. Maybe more to the story, page 2 of that story. That will be fun. But yeah, no doubt the Nutrilite, and by association, the artistry line, which for those that are new or maybe not familiar, the artistry is the skincare line. So, and skin is our largest organ. Technically, it's not. The inner lining of your vessels is, but we'll just say your skin. We'll just call it your largest organ in your body. And our skincare product is what? Recent stats notwithstanding, I think it's like in the top 5 prestige brand in the world or something like that. It's an amazing product. But sticking with that health framework, so when Larry is talking about using artistry and the skincare products, I know I use the vitamin C product myself. Love that little bottle. Super easy to apply every day or a couple of times a day. But this is a lot of the certified organic farms, these plant-based ingredients in our skincare line. So it's really phenomenal. And Larry, you look great. You continue to look great. And so thank you for that segment. So, well, I going to have some fun and get into a topic for those that are joined into the session later, or maybe weren't on last week when I teased this at the end. Last week I did, admittedly, for most people, one of the most boring topics you could possibly imagine, which is economics. But there was something that was unique going on in that week with the yen carry trade. And I just use that as kind of a segue into the overall economy, and a segment that we don't often cover on this program because we're so focused on just a client focused type value in this segment in our roundtables and topics and so forth. But I kind of backed up and said, hey, there's this economic portion of the HealthPointe model, which myself, a number of us are involved in, and that is, operating a business, a health and wellness business, where you're, call it coaching, call it facilitating. Basically, you're onboarding clients and building organizations where you can be really having agency and taking control of income and adding income. Could be a little bit a month, could be a lot a month, but in the topic of economics, as one of our mentors says, it's not the economics, it's your economics. There can be things going on in the world economics, national economics, statewide economics. What are your personal economics like? That's what you can take control of. And so I did a segment on that, and then teased at the end of last week's episode that I may continue with this geeky theme and get into the world of genetics. So promises made, promises delivered. Here we go, guys. So we're going to cover sometimes we talk about epigenetics. So I'm going to define some terms here. And let me say at the forefront, at the conclusion of this, does this mean that people have to run out and get a genetic test? That's not the point here. In fact, as you look at a lot of the actionable steps that would come from a genetic report, certainly the platform that I use, you can just look through that and all the recommendations just go, yep, HealthPointe, yep, HealthPointe, yep, got that one, HealthPointe. So it's very much something where you don't necessarily have to take a test. I will say this, and by all means, and we often say this, if you're in or listening to this and you are somebody that is not being coached, or you're not in our organization, don't take counsel from me. But I did opt to get educated to be able to platform and order up labs for genetic tests for people. And I use that, and I'm rolling out a process to be using that more and more for people that want a genetic test, not to find out what their ancestry is or what region of the world their ancestry came from or something like that, all of which is fine, but rather people that are interested in their genetic test for health ramifications. And so since I'm in this integrative oncology program, a big part of that program or a segment of that program is doing genetic testing. And so when we onboard a client that we're helping with cancer, they order up a genetic, or it's recommended they order up a genetic test. It's $299, and then more importantly, to have somebody to be able to interpret those results that they're seeing. And so in this world of genetics, I'm going to, first of all, acknowledge that just the word can seem daunting, and it certainly can be it can be a very complex topic, but I'm going to go through some things, and let me start with some simple definitions. First of all, think of a gene like a recipe for the recipe that creates the proteins within your body. Now, when we think of proteins, sometimes we think of muscle. Guys, your entire body, all your mechanisms of your body are proteins. So genes are the recipes that say, okay, make this protein, okay, make that protein, make this one, make that variant like that. That's a gene. Then there's what's called a SNP, and that's what we're going to focus on here. A SNP is what it's called. SNP is a single nucleotide polymorphism. Wow, what a mouthful on that. I think you have to have a genetic SNP in order to say the words genetic SNP. I think there's a segment of the population that can say that and those that can't, and it probably has to do with their genetics. But that's a genetic SNP, and a genetic SNP is, think of it like small. If you have a recipe, if a gene, the metaphor of a gene is a recipe for baking a cake or something like that, think of a SNP like a small spelling mistake within that recipe. Okay, so next term we're going to talk about is wild type and variant. Okay, so wild type is nothing more than saying if somebody's looking at a genetic report and it labels that as WT, wild type, that is just the most common variant of that, is the way to think of that. So if you hear that WT, that's just in the population at large, that's the most common variant of that. Then within variants specifically, there is what's called heterozygous and homozygous. Okay, so we inherit our genes from our parents, and if you're homozygous, that means that you've gotten that genetic variant from both sets of parents. If it's hetero, you've got that variant from just your mother or from your father. So obviously, in terms of impact and expression, if a genetic SNP comes up as homozygous, that is more influential than if something is heterozygous. And then lastly, just to understand conceptually how you might think when you're talking about the genetic codes and these small variants, like how could that make that much different? Now, let me explain that genetics, the genetic letters, the letters of a gene, GCAT, okay, you think, well, how can there be that much variance in that? And let me use this comparison. If I was to spell the word goat, G-O-A-T, everybody's got an image of a goat, right? G-O-A-T. Now, let me switch one letter, make that G a C, C-O-A-T. One, a goat. Second, a coat. Obviously, two totally different outcomes, but just a single change in a sequence of letters. And it can make that kind of a change. So in that context, think of that in terms of genetics. Okay, now let's dive into let me add this kind of caveat and how I frame it when I'm talking regarding these genetic SNPs that I'm going to get into that affect metabolism and weight loss and so forth like this. Again, I've already mentioned with or without this knowledge, people, if they just follow the 6-week cycle program, if they just work alongside their coach, if they do those elements of the 6-week cycle, you're fine. Nothing more needs to be done on that. Think of understanding any genetic SNPs as this. Imagine two people are riding bikes right next to each other. Two people are riding bikes, they're chatting, they're going down the same bike path, they're just having a good time walking or riding their bikes. And just imagine that somehow one of those bike riders is having headwinds. You ever ride a bike with headwinds, right? And there's this resistance, that is kind of leaning into you. Now, continuing with that, imagining that, just imagine that those people riding the bike, those two people riding the bike, that one person that has a headwinds strangely doesn't know that it's a headwind. They're just feeling the drag of the headwind, but they don't know what a headwind is. They've never heard of a headwind. They never got tested for this headwind. They're just, talking with their friend to the left of them who is just riding along, having a conversation. And let's say it's you that has these headwinds and you're like kind of getting like, geez, what's going on here? That person, I'm seemingly doing the same thing that they're doing. And yet I'm having this hard time. I almost don't want to talk about it because they obviously seem like they're not having a hard time. And man, I'm finding I'm getting fatigued. I'm having difficulty. I'm struggling to keep up with them. That is how I would encourage people to think about a genetic SNP. If you have one of these genetic SNPs, heterozygous or homozygous, that I'm going to outline, think of it in that context. And now think of it, that same metaphor of riding bikes, in the context of what if that person with the headwind knew that they had a headwind? Okay. It makes a bit of difference. Okay. Now, in one sense, it doesn't make a difference. They still got to pedal against a headwind. But what difference could it make? First of all, just think about the psychological, emotional aspect of it. If you've got this headwind and you know that you have this headwind and your friend to the left of you is just cruising along, having, doing the same things you're doing and having an easy time with it, and you're kind of struggling against this headwind, it's like, yeah, I've got a headwind. I know that. Emotionally, I know that. Psychologically, I know that. I've got a headwind. It is what it is. And we're going to enjoy our bike ride here together, but I've got this invisible headwind. Also, what you could do is you might change some techniques, okay? You might adapt your bike for some aerodynamics. Your friend that you're riding with really doesn't need to do that because they're not experiencing that headwind. But you might put some, I don't know what you would do to a bike, but you would do some things to your bike to kind of make it so that maybe you could counteract some of those headwinds and reduce the drag that you're feeling. Also, you might just know that maybe you just need to work your quads more, right? You might just need to know that it is what it is. You've got these headwinds, even with all this aerodynamic adaptations that you do to your bike. If you want to easily keep up with your friend on these fun bike rides, you're going to need to strengthen your quads. You're going to maybe need to have, a bit better lung capacity than your friend who kind of has it easier. Now, trust me, before you get jealous of your friend that doesn't have any headwinds, they probably have some headwinds in a different category of life, right? So it's not whether you have genetic SNPs or don't have genetic SNPs, it's just which do you have? And in this context, in the HealthPointe context and weight loss and so forth, we're focusing on these genetic SNPs. And so I'm using this bike riding metaphor, but don't get jealous of that person that doesn't have these genetic SNPs, because they've got others and they're going to have to deal with those in their lives. But just emotionally, psychologically, if you knew you had these headwinds, that alone might just kind of steel yourself to just, almost approach it with a bravado instead of a victim. And also you could make some adaptations to either your bike or to your body in terms of working to counteract that. So I want to kind of frame that out with that example of two bike riders to know that that's how you can kind of think of this. Okay, let's get geeky. Let's get on with gene SNP number 1, not in any rank order, but just this is the FTO gene. Okay, now if you really want to get geeky, and let me just, for those that love this stuff, in a gene, in a SNP, you'll have an RS code. So FTO is RS 9939609. There will be a pop quiz on this. No, kidding, no pop quiz on this. But that is the RS number for the FTO gene SNP. What is that? Not that I'm expecting anybody to go read these things, but you can say you know this now. For those of us that are old enough to remember libraries and card catalogs, where you actually walk into the library, you say, I need to find such and such a book. We will go over to the card catalog, and I can still remember this in Milford, riding my bike to the library. I love to read, and pulling open this long small drawer, and a bunch of cards in there. And that was a card catalog. And if you were looking for, Moby Dick or whatever, you would look up Moby Dick and it would say, this is the row, the aisle, the shelf, and so forth, where you can go find that book on the shelf. That's what an RS code is that you see next to a gene SNP. Nothing more, nothing less. There's millions of gene SNPs, just like there's millions of books in a library typically. So what scientists and people that are in the genetic space long ago did is they put together this RS code. So on the FTO gene, RS 9939609, this is a gene that influences appetite and hunger signals. So if you have a variant in this gene, you might feel hungry more often. It is what it is. You're on your bike, that's your headwind. Let's move on to MC4R gene. This gene affects how your body burns fat, especially during exercise. So variants here can mean that you don't burn fat as efficiently. And we'll get into some of these solutions, like how could you modify your bike? How could you do this or that with these types of variants? But again, it's all part and parcel in the HealthPointe program. So you don't even really need to do much different, but maybe a little bit of knowledge on it would be helpful. So that's the MC4R genetic SNP. Moving on, ADRB2. This affects how your body burns fat. I'm sorry. Lost my place here. We did, I think we already did that. We already did the ADBR. If not, I'm going to move on to the next one, the PPARG. Okay, the PPARG. This is a genetic SNP that is involved in fat storage and insulin sensitivity. Very big part of our program, right? So variants of this can influence how your body stores fat. And let me just mute somebody here 1 moment. Okay. And if that was somebody that wants to speak later, definitely unmute yourself later. So that's a PPAR gene. Moving on quickly in our time here. Lastly is the LEPR gene. And this gene affects how your body responds to leptin. We've heard of that. I think we've used that term in this program before. That's the hormone that signals fullness. That's kind of a one that's, you know, when I learned more about this, I remember seeing a program, and maybe you guys have seen this documentary on TV about people that have these really interesting genetic mutations. And I remember this one, it's not this one, but it was similar in nature in that this person couldn't sense pain, right? So the rest of us, you know, if we put our hand on a hot stove, we get burn pain. If we, you know, stub our toe on a rock, we get that pain. And that pain signal is, you know, a genetic trait. There's people that have a variant that they don't have that. And you think, oh, wow, that's great. You wouldn't feel pain. No, not so great, because this person that can't feel that pain can have things happening that can cause pain that they don't back away from. You know, they put their hand on a hot stove. They don't realize it's a hot stove because they don't get that pain. Next thing they know, I mean, it's still burning them. They just don't feel it. Or they, you know, they have their leg in something that is putting pressure on it and it's ready to snap, and they don't realize it because they don't get that pain signal, and boom, they break their bone. So that when we're talking about the LEPR gene, this is similar. If you can imagine, not that it's pain, but when you eat, you know, if you sit down to an all-you-can-eat buffet and just go hog wild on this and just strap on the feed bag and, you know, snort your way through this entire buffet, there's a point where you kind of get this pain or this full feeling, right? What is causing that? Well, in part, it's the LEPR gene that is the influence of the hormone leptin. If people don't have that, or they have a SNP variant, then imagine just being able to eat and eat and eat and eat and eat, and you never have that signal that says, stop, you're full, you're fine. So that's that. So, okay. So those are the 5 genetic SNPs. And if I didn't cover them sequentially, or if I messed up on that, just a review: the FTO, the MC4R, the ADR-B2, the PPARG, and the LEPR gene SNP that can have that those effects. So again, these are headwinds, nothing more, nothing less. Not necessary that you know it. In my case, you know, I have process where I'll encourage or basically sell a genetic test, you know, even if it's at my cost. You know, a lot of these outfits out there that do genetic test results. There's one that I was looking at where they're, you know, charging, call it $1,000. It was like $999 to have somebody's genetic test results come into their dashboard, and then they interpret that and help them understand, you know, the different genetic traits. In our case, you know, I'm more interested in helping people understand any genetic influences that they might have, any SNPs that they might have, and then more importantly, what do you do about that? And particularly if it comes to weight loss, you know, we've got a real fantastic program called HealthPointe that can help them with that. And at the end of the day, what's happening on most of these, what influences the genetic SNPs the most is the epigenetics, which we cover so well in HealthPointe, like your macronutrients, your lifestyle choices, you know, exercise, and also supplementation. So that is part and parcel to our program. Okay, guys, quite the walk down geeky road there, but hope that was of value. Anybody have any questions, comments, or are you all asleep? You are all asleep. Okay. So that's all right. So let's put a wrap on this. I think we are definitely at the 1 hour
Eric,
mark.
Eric, I wasn't asleep. My phone is ready to go to sleep. So that's why I had to turn things off. That was very interesting. Thank you so much for the insight on that.
You bet. You bet. Absolutely. Well, thanks, Carol. Thanks for that. For Carol and for the rest of us, we've done it again. We've started into this program, this hour-long program, not knowing really what we were going to cover. And we had so many interesting twists and turns and people chiming in, you know, Erica and Larry and so forth with, you know, real life experiences and applications. And Carol, fantastic program once again on bone health. I think we've got to be relabeling you the bone health queen. But thank you so much for that. So much that we've learned on that and mitochondria. Hank chiming in also on the D3 and the specifics on some recommended, some advice and so forth that came from another doctor. And so people can look into that. Just an hour-long packed, richly packed hour, I should say. So, all right, guys, we'll see everyone next week, same time, same place. Till then, bye-bye.
All right, bye. Thanks so much, Eric, for
Bye.
everything.
Thank you.
You bet. You bet. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody. Have a great week.
Bye-bye.